We're back with more Tapped Out with Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
Rolling right along here, Tapped Out on the BetQL Network with Jake Nowicker and Brendan Tobin. I am the sports machine, Sean Levine. Before we get out of here, in a little while, we will preview UFC 305. We got a pay-per-view coming up right around the corner, of course. That is Bad Blood. Israel Adesanya, the favorite, taking on the champion, Dracus du Plessis, at plus 110, of course. Izzy, friend of the show, DDP. Have we had DDP on? Every now and again, I forget. We bring on all the fighters. Did we bring him on?
No.
I would remember that accent, wouldn't I? That's on me. DDP, sorry, I'm betting against you that night, especially plus 110. I have no problem paying minus 140, but we'll get into all that fun here in a little while when we talk UFC 305. Right now, let's play a game of favorite or the field. You can take the champion. If you don't think it's going to be a champion a year from now, you can take the field. Just tell me who it's going to be. Let's start with the big guys. Let's start Tom Aspinall. John Jones, technically the champion when it comes to the heavyweights. If you don't fight, I don't know how you're considered the champion. Aspinall being kind of disrespected, being called the interim champion. So I'll call him the champion right now. A year from now, is it Tom Aspinall or is it the field at heavyweight?
I'm going to go with Tom Aspinall. I don't think that John Jones will continue fighting after his MSG showdown, his GOAT showdown with Stipe. So I think then it'll pass off to Tom Aspinall being the undisputed guy. And I don't see a lot of threats right now in that division. Ciryl Gane, Jailton Almeida. He's beaten Pavlovich. I mean, Volkov certainly, I guess, is a live wire. He's only 3. He's fighting Ciryl Gane in a rematch coming on up. But I don't know. I think that Tom Aspinall is going to handle every single one of those guys.
Are there any young guys that we're not talking about that just haven't had enough fights? Like Bo Nickel, I know he's not a heavyweight. I'm talking about that type of fighter where, for whatever reason, he doesn't have the number next to his name or he doesn't have the hype behind him. Because at heavyweight, you've pointed this out a couple of times during the show, and it's kind of starting to scare me. Tom Aspinall, like even last championship fight, if you think about it, if we've already gotten to Curtis Blades, no disrespect, there's just not a whole lot left for Aspinall. John Jones doesn't fight. Francis Ngannou's in PFL. Couple of other guys aren't we expected if you think about like a Pavlovich necessarily. So the names just aren't there that I can see.
Yeah, I mean, like the young guy is Tom Aspinall. Like he's the young guy.
Okay,
you know, that's the thing. It's a little it's funny. It's almost a little reminiscent of John Jones when he took over 205 because it was John Jones and then a bunch of guys who were getting older and you know, maybe somebody will come along, you know, a Gustafsson type will come along one day to challenge Tom Aspinall and rock our world a little bit. But right now, no, he looks pretty unfazed. I mean, like here's the rest of they got Gane, who I guess you could say is in air quotes young. Volkov is not young. Pavlovich is, you know, he's already beaten him. Curtis Blades, he's beat. Stipe's old as hell. Jailton Almeida is like probably the newest blood that's there. Tybura and Spivak are fighting tonight. Tai Tuivasa's 10th, and Tai Tuivasa's lost 4 in a row. He's halfway to a Tony Ferguson. Derek Lewis is 11th. Jairzinho Rosenstrike is fighting Tai Tuivasa. Yeah, dude, it's a rough division. It's Tom Aspinall's world right now. If Paeta doesn't come up there,
how are you gonna slip that one in? That's like the funniest thing you've said in the last 2 hours. He's halfway. You don't want to be halfway to a Tony Ferguson. That's not a good spot to be in for a UFC fighter. 8 straight losses for one El Kakui. All right, favorite of the field a year from now, light heavyweight, Alex Pereira.
I'm going to stick with the favorite. Kind of the same reason. I feel like he's beaten pretty much everybody that would be a threat. Suppose you could still throw Rakic in there being a live wire. Ankalaev is definitely like the one everybody's waiting for as a matchup. But Ankalaev will mix it up, and I think we've seen, like, you know, if you get into some firefights with him, he's not necessarily the same guy. So I'm still rocking with Pereira. I think that he has the belt a year from now.
Yeah, and again, he's cleared out a lot of the division, as you were pointing out. Same thing. How about we got a fight coming up between Dracus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya. If Izzy wins that fight, then it basically makes this point obsolete. I can get you DDP a year from now, still the champion, or the rest of the field, which since he's got a fight coming up, that's probably going to be 3, maybe even 4 fights. DDP fights quite a bit. You like DDP or the field as the champion a year from now?
This one I like the field. I think, the Sean Strickland fight was super close. I think he's shown he can have success against both guys who are fighting for the belt. So he's certainly a live wire. Robert Whitaker, though he's lost to both of these guys, maybe he has a bit of a second step here. I don't see Imavov, who's 4th, having a shot. Cannonier, no. Vittori, no. Maybe Brendan Allen, who we talked about a little bit earlier on in the show, can make a leap there. But I just think there's a lot more live weapons there that could be a new champion by next year. I think that's a division I could see it change hands even a couple of times.
I'm with you there. So if you had to put money on it, Strickland, maybe? He's got the title shot lined up, and he's proven that he can beat both those guys. What do you think would happen if he runs it back against Izzy? Because he beat him up that night, and we've never seen Izzy get beat up. We've seen him lose, but we've never really seen him get his ass whooped like that. Do you think we'd see the same thing? Like, did Strickland figure out Stylebender?
That's going to be an interesting one, because I think that's one of those where I don't necessarily if you can compare it to like Amanda versus Juliana Pena as like just a bad night, because we've seen Izzy lose a handful of times now in the recency with Jan and Pajeda and all that. But I think that he can have a much better performance. I think that he definitely seemed a little bit shell-shocked from that first round. If he can avoid taking a bomb like he did, I think it can maybe set in motion a different fight.
Let's say Izzy looks awesome in this fight against DDP, just for the sake of this conversation here on the radio, knocks him out in the second round, and then he's got a fight coming up against Sean Strickland. You point out Amanda Nunes, when she was a heavy favorite in that fight, she was like a minus 800 the first time around. The second time around, she was still a huge favorite. She was like a minus 400. The reason I'm bringing it up, so let's say Strickland and Izzy fight again 6 months from now. Who do you think would be favored to win the fight?
I think Strickland's going to be favored to win the fight because he was so thoroughly dominant in that fight. I think it's different if it was just a 1-round knockout. Maybe the odds makers would be like, Izzy just made a mistake. But I think that when you beat somebody like that over the course of 5 rounds, I think it's pretty hard to argue that he should not be the favorite in that fight. I think that'd be pretty crazy. And if you did get Sean Strickland as a dog that night for whatever reason, I'd run to go bet on him, because he's shown you over 25 minutes he can have a lot of success against Israel Adesanya.
I wouldn't run. It's easy to talk yourself into Israel Adesanya at even money also. I mean, he's one of the best fighters of this generation and certainly capable, I think, of beating Sean Strickland, but he didn't look like it the first time around. That's fair. Bilal Muhammad, he said for a long time, remember the name, I'm going to be champion, and now Bully Bilal is indeed. You got to think that Dana doesn't love him as champion, so he's going to be like, you got to get in there probably 3 times, you would think, in the next calendar year. I can get you Bilal still the champion, or the rest of the field. I think you're going with the field.
Honestly, there's only one guy that I think can do it, and it's Shavkat. I don't think Jack Della Maddalena can beat Bilal. I don't think that Ian Gary is ready to touch Bilal. Sean Brady, he's already beaten. He's beaten Gilbert Burns. We talked a little bit about this. The Kamaru would be an interesting one. If Kamaru gets back in there, can Kamaru turn back the clock and get his belt back? I think it's a tough ask. I think it's a fun story, but I think it's a tough ask. So, I'm gonna pick Shavkat because I've been a Shavkat guy for a long time, but I think it's a thin field. I think if it's not him, I think Bilal's got that belt.
But there are a couple of guys you put out there that the truth is we still don't know, even though we watch them fight, like an Ian Gary. I think you could ask a bunch of people that know about fighting, is Ian Gary a future champion? And you get some people like me that are still waffling. You get some people that say, hell no. And we brought on plenty of guests that know what they're talking about that say, yeah, that guy's going to have the belt. So there's a couple of guys I wouldn't just brush off necessarily as quick as you just did.
This is the thing though with Ian. Like, I'm not that guy. Like, I just think that, first of all, he's very young. When you talk about a 26-year-old fighter, you're talking about a very young fighter. So I think that there's still plenty of time for him to improve. You're asking me, can he do it in a year? I still think he looks like a guy who's still very clearly trying to round out his craft. He is training in Brazil and trying to get his ground game set. He's not really a knockout artist, but he can be taken down. I just think that Bilal, that just seems like one of those, Bilal just grinds that fight out easily, and he doesn't really feel threatened anywhere from Ian Gary, So I'm not saying he's never going to be champion, because never is a really long time. He's got time to improve. I just think this particular champion, a little bit of a stylistic nightmare. If you told me, hey, Jack Della Maddalena is the champion one day and he gets that matchup, yeah, maybe he wins. Leon Edwards, could he win that fight? Yeah, he could win. But I don't know. But him versus Bilal, that feels like a bit of a nightmare right now.
Yeah, I don't think Bilal and Leon are going to run it back anytime soon. Islam, of course, has had the belt wrapped around his waist now for a while. He's the number one in the pound-for-pound rankings as I speak. I can get you Islam Makhachev or the rest of the field to be champion a year from now. You're waffling.
Nah, I gotta go with Islam. I don't, even with Sarukian having some success the last time they fought, I'm not seeing a lot of options. I mean, he's beaten Oliveira. Gaethje's obviously coming off the loss. He's beaten Poirier, Gamrot, maybe. Michael Chandler's allegedly fighting Conor McGregor.
We'll see.
Yeah, I don't, unless like Rafael Fiziev has like a crazy resurgence where he's like knocking everybody out. I don't really see where the threats are to Islam. And also, and he's also dealing with an injury, so he's going to be on the shelf a little bit, So unless you want to play like Fugazi, it is an interim champion count. But no, if it's him as the guy, I don't think he's getting that belt taken away.
Show a little respect. Easy for me to say when you talk about DuBronx, Charles Oliveira. Ilia Topuria is the champion. Sean O'Malley is the champion, of course. I honestly like, and then you got Pantoja as the next three champs. All three of those guys. All right, which one are you most confident a year from now is still champion?
O'Malley. I think Sean O'Malley will hold. Yeah, I think O'Malley. I think Max Holloway is going to beat Topuria. So I'm going field there. 135 is a Shark Tank, and yeah, Umar Nurmagomedov could beat Sean O'Malley, but I'm picking Sean O'Malley. I think Sean O'Malley will hold the belt in a year's time. And Pantoja, those flyweight fights are always super close. Like every one of those championship fights feels like a coin flip. So I'm going to go with the field.
Also, a coin flip for most people would be actually Ilia Topuria would probably be the favorite in most people's eyes against Max. You sounded very confident when you said you think Max Holloway is going to beat him. Is that recency bias? Is that we all love Max Holloway? Because Ilia Topuria, I mean, he's the dude.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Max Holloway get beat up like once in his career, and it was the third fight against Volkanovski. Most of the time it's either pretty even or he's dishing out the beating. So just think Topuria is in for a rude awakening when he takes on Max Holloway. Guy's tremendously talented. He's fun. Looks like he's got the makings of star potential, but I just think Max Holloway is one of the all-time greats, and I think he's going to get his belt back.
So we've been doing this show now for 3 or 4 years. Math's never really been my thing. What's a year between friends? And it was when Max had just lost the third time to Alexander Volkanovski, and I remember saying Max is now kind of in no man's land. How's he going to work his way back up the rankings? What's he going to do? Volk's on top of the world. And here we are, BT, a few years later, and it's completely flip-flopped, where now we've got Alexander Volkanovski, who's like, what's his plan going forward? Now we're talking about him getting knocked out. In the case of Max Holloway, he's on top of the world. He's the BMF. He's fighting for Ilya's belt. Funny how things change in this sport just over a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it's risk-taking, right? Because if Volkanovski just sat fat and sassy, or I guess thin and sassy in this case, like he could have just maybe reigned at 145 and would have been fine and taken on all comers. But, he dared to be great. He dared to go take on Islam Makhachev, and the risk didn't pay off. I mean, other than a lot of respect for him, because we all were like, oh, I thought that he won the first one, and then he got knockout. So it's for a guy that looked like he was going to be etched in maybe a Mount Rushmore scenario, now is not. but that's that you dare to be great. And I think I got nothing against Volkanovski for trying that. He, maybe there'll be another path where he is back on top one day, but right now the door's back open for Holloway.
On an all-time great list, I know I'm a list guy more than you, but on an all-time great list, who do you think goes down higher, Max Holloway or Alexander Volkanovski? Both probably top 10 all-time fighters.
Yeah, they're probably like real neck and neck right now. So I guess you'd have to give the nod to Volk being 3-0, even though the first two were super, super, super close. But if Max becomes featherweight champion again, then I think that's kind of his little bump. So I think that will be decided after this upcoming matchup.
The blessed is best. That's BT on the Sports Machine, tapped out here on the BetQL network.